So we've got the world going to shit around us, but
Yes.
we've got this interview. So Gary, how did you get into the world of acting?
How did I get into the world of acting? Well, my father, he kind of pushed us around and prodded us to just do different things in the arts to see what we would be interested in. And there was painting classes, and then there was a theater and art school called Freedom Theater in Philadelphia that we all came up through, me and my siblings. And it sort of stuck with me. They were teaching dance, drama, uh, voice lessons. Um, the musical instruments came around the same time, but that's because of my mother's side of the family, her brother, and my father's first son. My older brother was a flautist as well. But the drama stuck with me, and it's something that I found a good expression with, especially at those times when you're just a young teen or preteen, even a tween, as they call them. Just needed something to keep me out of trouble. So that was it. I stuck around in the arts for a while. And then I moved up to New York from Philadelphia. I kept on auditioning. I was doing theater. I enrolled in some classes at Strasberg and Meisner Technique, and I kept at it. It kept being a passion of mine. I'd go to see theater, some plays, off Broadway stuff, anything that I could sneak into or get into cheap. And because it was, theater is expensive to go see. And I had a bunch of bands in New York, and I kept up with my with my love of music and my passion for that as well. And then I found myself on a TV show with Debbie Allen directing me, and that was the start of me doing sitcoms. But then I'd go back to New York and pay the band's rent off, all the members of the band, that, because I was making more money at that point, and we were starving musicians. But I kept acting. I kept at it. I didn't know what was going to break because I was an oddball at the time. I had dreadlocks down the middle of my back, light-skinned black guy with light eyes. I mean, there wasn't a lot of roles there to get with me looking the way that I did. But I guess I just kind of carved out a little niche for myself, and I just made up things as I went along. And before you know it, there was stuff getting written for guys that looked like me. So it kind of flipped around.
Did you
But
have any influences in like the movie industry growing up? And clearly you did in the music industry too. So who were your influences in music and movie?
well, the biggest influences in music were Jimi Hendrix and Al Green and Bill Withers. The biggest influences and there's so many other in music. There's just an endless list. The biggest influences in theater and acting were Sam Jackson. His theater work was incredible, and just his film catalog is magnificent. And he always is a very vibrant character, always very well spoken and very clear, and a good bad guy and a good nice guy too. Robert De Niro was always a hero of mine in the acting world. I did go to Strasberg, and I was hoping to kind of you know get some tips from him. And I did run into him in the street a couple of times, and I worked with his daughter on some gigs that we did together. So I did get close to the fire with that. There was a lot of actors in New York at that time in the late '90s, in the mid to late '90s. That were just living in New York, in New York City. So I would serve them coffee, different jobs I used to have, and I'd kick around and just ask a lot of questions. I asked a lot of questions. So there was Sam Jackson, De Niro, also of course Denzel was a big hero of mine. He's done so many great films, and he was also just great to lose yourself in the film with him in it. Sidney Poitier, and of course the great Harry Belafonte. And for me to check out Harry's work and his whole catalog was magnificent, because he was not only a great actor, but he was a great singer as well. So, there's a lot of good history lessons in there when you're watching. and you can pick up a lot from watching those actors on screen, you know, especially Sidney Poitier's old films. Fantastic.
There would be like 60s, 70s, wouldn't there be? All the like the Poitier classics.
Oh, for Sidney Poitier, yeah. 60s, yeah. A lot of them in the 60s, even some in the late 50s.
In
There's
the
some
late
black and white.
50s.
Yeah, there's some black and white ones there. But a lot of the body of his works was the 60s and 70s, yeah.
So people know you for your role in CSI.
Mm-hmm.
Was CSI, you were on it for a really good stint. Was that sort of a pit stop for you in your head initially? You know, whenever you go into a job, sometimes you're like, I'm going to be here a year, then I'll fly out. Did you always intend to stay for as long on CSI?
Well, the thing with TV shows, especially when they're just beginning, is you never know what's going to happen with the show. It could get canceled after 3 episodes, or it could get canceled after the first season. You never know. And they make you sign a long contract for a few years, but you really don't have any idea if it's going to take off or it's going to be something that the network wants. This was one of those shows. To be honest with you, I think there's stories of William Peterson not working for several years, going back and doing theater, and then coming to him every year with a new pilot for some show that he didn't want to be a lawyer and he didn't want to be a doctor. He didn't want to be just a cop. And he just kept on turning down a bunch of stuff. They had him pegged to do some show about a district attorney. And he was on it for a second. Then he dropped out to do CSI. And they said, you don't know what you're doing. That show's going nowhere. And around the time they pegged me for it, which was the pilot, I had done a show the year previously with Mark Helgenberger. We had done a pilot, and it was almost a similar circumstance. She was a forensic detective, and I was kind of her helicopter pilot, sort of sidekick who would fall into some of the cases with her while just trying to take her from case to case. It was a great pilot, but it didn't get picked up. And a year later, I found myself sitting across the table from Mark again, and it was for CSI. And you just never know. And at the time, you know, we had high hopes, but we didn't know that it would be the success that it is today. It's ridiculous how it took off. And the network didn't know it either. They had us in a really bad time slot. They didn't put any money in us. And we were shooting way up in East Bubble Flub, somewhere in Valencia, way out of Hollywood, on a super low budget. And we were getting paid chips. And then the show took off after the first year. And the next thing you know, we were all over the place. And we got flown to South America to promote the show even before it was there. You just never know what's going to hit. Now, we have interviews afterwards talking about why we thought it was so successful. And I would say things like, well, you know, these days we're getting into the interweb and people are wanting to check out more science programs and documentaries. And so we're kind of like a mashup of a detective show and all of the things that we're interested in. And then later on, I would say, I think, given that people like detective shows, but I think I'd like to say that it was because of our chemistry as a cast. We had great chemistry.
Yeah, it's always the chemistry
we got
between
along
characters.
Well. It is. It's very important. If you're going to have a love story, it's going to have to be like Ghost. The two main characters are going to have some electrifying chemistry with each other for it to work. And that's the same thing with an ensemble. The ensemble has to be tight, you know? And we were that. We were that.
Was
So
it
we're very
stressful?
fortunate.
Like, because like the CSI episodes weren't sort of like TV shows like nowadays. Nowadays, people just pop out like a TV show and you got like 10 episodes. These were like full block seasons. Was it not stressful having to film like just 20 odd episodes here, couple of months break, 20 odd episodes here?
Yeah, we had a full 23, 24 episodes a season. And we would get a month and a half, 2 months break. Then we would dive right back in the middle of August, up in the desert. You know, It was hard work. The other thing was that we weren't shooting like a sitcom, like 8-hour days, then we go home and have dinner with our families. We were pushing some hours. We were, you know, there'd be like 15-hour days sometimes. It was hard on the crew. Sometimes we were late on shows, so we would have to shoot two shows at the same time. So on one stage, you would have one show, and then you would just go to the other stage and shoot some scenes of the other show. There's a lot of science dialogue, but when you're rolling like that, it's great because your adrenaline's up and you have to keep the engine moving, you know. The times that you would have a lot of time to kill and you'd be driving for hours trying to get to a set, that can take the civility out of you. So there was some tough moments, but all in all, it was a fantastic experience. And I'm very, very grateful, very honored to be part of that cast and to make some history there, you know.
Was there lots of research involved? You know, like if you're investigating something particular in an episode, would you go and research it? So when you're delivering a dialogue, you're a bit more confident in yourself that you know what you're talking about, or would you just
fortunately, after we started being a bit of success, and even in the beginning, we had real crime scene investigators with us, just shadowing us through all of the major bits of discoveries in science, and also working with the writers. Now, of course, a lot of the writers would go off on a bit of a tangent and have their imagination take over and write things that had never really occurred before, just for TV and sensationalism. But I was one of those actors who would give them a hard time, and it would change a lot of my dialogue because I would say, real cops don't talk like this. They've been working together for 10 years. It's a little bit of a shorthand that they talk with. And for the first year, those writers hated me. They absolutely abhorred me. They did not want to deal with me. But then after a year and a half, they saw that we were a success. They saw that we were getting good reviews for our character portrayals, and they saw what I was trying to do. I'm an actor, so I have to make it real for me, and I have to make it genuine. This is not an infomercial, you know. I have to kind of have it based on some reality. I know that this is a fictitious set and it's a fictitious character, so to speak, but I have to bring some reality to it, or I can't do this for another season if that's not in the. So I would hang with the CSIs, the real CSIs. One, his name was Larry Mitchell, and him and I became really good friends. And he had been on the force for over 15 years. For him, he said, man, I don't know what you guys are doing here. It's like picking money up off the ground. Because he had seen all the dead bodies and the decapitations and the marital spouts and all this kind of stuff, that all the things that he had to investigate, working for the sheriff's department in Los Angeles for so many years. He's just seen it all. And by it all, I mean the most morbid shit that you've ever seen. So he had to see all of this, and him working with us was just a joy. He got to be very expressive with his history. It was great.
If we were to flash forward now from CSI and go to Redemption Day, you're sort of doing the opposite. You're sort of creating the mass body counts instead of investigating them. So what was it like shooting like?
Sure.
What was it's not exactly a full out action movie. It's more of a character movie with action throughout. But when the action happens, it happens. What was it like having a movie that was essentially, it was a character based action movie, if you want to point out that, because you had to put loads of emotion into a character as he was suffering PTSD. It wasn't just your bog standard action flick. Was there much research sort of into soldiers and how they're affected after war?
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I took on the job, because I spoke to Hitchum, he's the creator and the director of the film, about that specifically. I said I wanted to make the character a little bit more than one dimension, than just your average action hero who saves the day and rescues his wife from the bad guys. We needed a history. We needed him to have some baggage. We needed him to be human, to be culpable, to have some faults, to have some, you know, to have some history, like I said. And it helped me dig deeper into the character and to play more dimensions. I think it also helped the story some. But for me, it was important to do that because I've known over the years some men and women that have worked in the service industry, and they do carry that with them back into civilian life, civilian life. And I crafted the character based off of 2 Navy SEALs that I'm friends with. I tried my best to honor them in that way, because it's a tough job to do, and they take it home with them. And I wanted to make the character a hero, but I wanted to make him a hero with, you know, with some good qualities and some past that he's dealing with. Hitchum was into the idea. I was even taking it further, that I wanted to further, because when I was on CSI, we often some of the issues that I was dealing with, I would talk to therapists, and the therapists that I would talk to were going out to people in the armed services and offering his services as a therapist. And I would get on the air and do infomercials for him. So I wanted to take that further, because I know that it's such a tough job to do. And then I just wanted to give them something that, you know, my little nod to their actions over these years, you know. And we appreciate that.
You got to have a couple of hand scenes, some lethal, some not lethal. The non-lethal is when you were sparring with the great Ernie Hudson.
Yeah.
You look like you're pretty ripped, man. Did you do much training for the role, or you just generally you're just ready?
Well, no, I you know, usually when you shoot a blockbuster big action film, the company's behind you to get you training 6 months in, 9 months before the film. And I only had 2.5 months to get, you know, into some sort of a stamina for this. So I've been doing this thing that on my birthday, I treat myself to a birthday present where I immerse myself in some kind of a physical thing. So lately I've been doing this, going away to a boxing camp with all the professional boxers, so a Thai boxing camp. And it just happened that he had written that scene in before he knew this. So the first thing I did was jet off to go back into my regiment of that. But then with this character, with this performance, you know, there's a lot of other things. You know, you got to get more comfortable with the assault rifles and the Kalashnikovs and the AKs and the 9s and the Glocks, and it was all of that to deal with. And then there was the fight scenes, and the fight choreography didn't happen until I had gotten to Morocco. So by then, hopefully you could see that I was trying to be as physical as possible. I did deal with some injuries along the way, but you just work through them. And you hope that you hope that your nervousness can get you through the injuries, you know. I had a good time with. I have a good time with physical acting and physical comedy.
What was the most challenging, like, scene to film? Because it looked like it was sort of shot on location.
Yeah, we were in Morocco the whole time.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Carry on there. My charger fell out of my computer, naturally.
You still there? Okay.
Yeah, still here.
Okay. Yeah, we filmed in Morocco, which is another character in the film, if you ask me. I adore Morocco. I think it's one of the most magnificent places to visit. I should work for the tourist board. This is only I just finished a film there 2 months ago. And I really love going there because there's so much history and there's so much beauty. There's like so many different microclimates. You can go from mountains to the beach, to snow on the top of the mountains, to dry, arid sand. The food is magnificent. The people are the most hospitable and kind-hearted folks everywhere, around every different village. And you'll be walking through some villages that are 6,000 years BC. And they'll still be walking around with a donkey cart or some horse carriages. It's a really magnificent place to visit. If you haven't been, I recommend you going. And it just happens to be a great place to film because you could throw a camera up in the sky and not get a bad shot. I think it's one of my favorite places to film, and I'm looking forward to doing something else there.
With Redemption Day, it does end on the note of we can go another round. Is that the plan, or are you just going to leave us in suspense?
Well, we've had talks about it, and I'm hoping that that comes into fruition. Listen, I had a fantastic time with this cast. We had Andy Garcia, which is just such a pleasure and an honor to work with him. Martin Donovan came on for a couple of days. Serinda Swan is my wife, is fantastic. She's a consummate professional. Ernie Hudson is my dad. Come on. I looked at the film and I was like, we really actually do resemble each other. And it's just, you know, Sammy Nassiri is the bad guy. Absolutely fantastic. Just so full of passion. So I'm hoping to, you know, do this dance again. It'd be nice, you know. Let's see what this new year brings. You know,
would it be more of sort of set in the city this time round?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a hand in writing it. Maybe you can throw me some notes on that one with your ideas of what you might want to see. Because at this point, I'm really interested in how we would handle, you know, a sequel, a part 2, a continuation of the trails and the trials of Captain Brad Paxton. We'll see, you know, we'll see what he comes up with, what Hitchum comes up with.
The ending of Redemption Day, with spoilers in here, the Navy SEALs come in and they pull your ass out of the fire, essentially, which I thought was quite a cool touch, because being in your situation, there was no way your character would have got out without them. Was that another thing that sort of attracted you to the script? There's that sense of realism there too.
No, I mean, yes and no. I like those movies like you know, First Blood, you know, where Stallone has to kick his way out of the whole thing and they don't come into the very end. Or like Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon, where, you know, or was it Game of no, it's Enter the Dragon, where the cavalry comes, but after he's already kicked everyone's ass, you know.
Yeah.
It's sort of, sometimes when I see movies when the cavalry comes in, I just know it's just going to be a whole shoot 'em up, and then I kind of lose some interest when I watch films like that. But at least this one, he kept it with you just don't, you know, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be one of those, everything is just all good, you know, it's kind of hanging at the bit, you know, and there's some things that happen that keep it going, you know. You think it's all going good, and then it just goes to shit. I like that. I like the reality of that, because that's sometimes how it happens, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing ever goes 100%. Some, like today's day, for instance, everything that went wrong went wrong.
Right. Let's say the whole year of 2020. How about that?
God, that was one big cluster, wasn't it?
Whew.
So hopefully 2021 can bring us the return of Brad Paxton. And
I'm hoping that as well. And maybe we can get some movie theaters open so we can see the second one.
Exactly. Because the first one deserves to be seen on the big screen.
I agree.
So before we wrap up, so anyone who's watching this and they're like, Redemption Day, or what's it about? Sell Redemption Day to the audience.
Well, I'd say that it's about a guy who really loves his family and his wife, and he's going to do anything to make sure that no one messes with the sanctity of his world.
That basically sums up without spoiling anything.
Yeah, it's a good family film.
Yeah, bring the kids.
Exactly.
Gary, it was amazing having you on, man. I've been a fan since CSI.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for saying that.
Man, all the best with the release of Redemption Day and other works, and Redemption Day 2 and possibly 3, because you just can't have a movie and a sequel, you know what I mean?
I like that. Write us. Put some notes in there for the producers. That's what's up.
Man, take care, and most
You
of all, keep safe, Gary.
You too. And good luck to you in Ireland, man.
Thank you,
Blessings to
man.
everyone there. All right.
Thanks, Gary. It's been a pleasure, man. See you later.
Pleasure's mine, man. Blessings to you.